Art Slice is a different dive into art history. We goof around, we curse, you learn from it, but don't expect a typical lecture. You're welcome. Art Slice LDCTC LLC presents Injectable Glow.
Maximize your B scene.
Create brand awareness.
Consume 600% of consumer vision.
Turn no into yes.
Melt adjacent competitor products.
Never lose a business card again.
It's simple for
Playful.
Crisp.
Sophisticated.
Permanent.
Enhance your brand's identity.
With Art Slice LDCTC LLC Injectable Glow.
Maximize your B scene.
del mundo. Su fundador.
Oh, fuck. Every episode stuff. Welcome, listeners, to the Art Slice Museum, Laboratories Division of Color Theory and Color Studies.
Art Slice Museum LDCTC.
I'm Russell Shoemaker.
I'm Stephanie Duenas. Listeners, if you're just joining us for the first time, this is not your typical Art Slice episode, so if you're looking for a full serving of art history, check out our latest episode on Hilma af Klint's epic series, The Swan, which is actually a follow-up to episode 14, which came out last year.
Yeah.
So episode 14 and then 22 for the full serving.
So if you're counting at home, first episode 14, then 22, unless you want to listen to this one first. Anyway, our Pantrémons have been hard at work compiling data from your different experiences with colors, listeners, so we can try to better understand how us humans categorize color, how we perceive color, how colors exist, how they behave, how they impact us.
Here in the Art Slice Museum LDCTC, we're going to touch on the history of color theory, talk about the history of the pigments behind the paint,
then get into ours, and most importantly, your associations with those colors, listeners, as individuals, as culture, as memory, because if you're an artist, an art admirer, a designer,
if you maintain aging boardwalk attractions,
yes, color impacts you in ways that are obvious and also not so obvious.
So today, listeners, we're piercing our eyes with fluorescence.
Ouch.
More specifically, because we have to narrow it down a bit, fluorescent yellow. And we thought we'd get into this particular color because we are both older as millennials, and thus we are children of the 1990s, and we grew up basically surrounded by fluorescent colors.
Trashy consumer culture, transcendence. I love it. I'm here for it, Stephanie. And listener Dionisio listed off some fluorescent associations that I think personify this color pretty accurately. Bright, alert, caution, hazard, radioactive, lemons, caustic, highlighters.
At Ezreal's Art said glow sticks, raves, punk rock, police tape, detention, light bulbs, late nights, nuclear waste. And at She's Lively simply said slime. And listeners, at the end of surveys, we often ask you how you're vibing with the color. And usually, y'all end up going one way or the other. But on fluorescence, okay, well, you know what? First, let's give our baseline to the listeners so you know where we stand.
So they know our biases, Stephanie? Know that Big DG tucks us in at night? Gives us a little fluorescent kiss on the forehead?
Yes. I'm like a 10-10 on fluorescence, and it took me a while to understand them, but now I'm all about them in the right context.
I'm like a hard 10 out of 10, okay?
Okay.
But like listener and patron Amanda, thank you, Amanda, for being a patron, pointed out, fluorescent colors are often meant to influence you, usually to buy something.
Yeah.
So I understand the distrust. They're powerful, and they are often used manipulatively.
Right, which I would say most of you were generally okay-ish with fluorescence. Only a few of you were probably 10 out of 10s like us.
Yeah.
Even loving when they diverge into cheesy glowiness. However, to counter our 10 out of 10, just so you know that we are not skewing colors in our favor, listener Emily Ann has this to say. Fluorescent yellow, quote, reminds me of drawing with colored pencils and crayons when I was a kid. Aw. I would grab it thinking it was yellow and get angry after I realized it was the puke color.
Wait, what? Oh, okay.
The puke color. Okay.
You had to drink a lot of Mountain Dew to have like that sort of puke color. All right, go on.
I would literally break the crayon so I wouldn't use it and accidentally ruin my masterpieces.
Okay.
I still hate it.
Oh my God.
It's not green. It's not yellow. It's too bright and makes me uncomfortable.
Fair.
This undignified pigment,
Whoa.
along
Whoa.
with fluorescent
Whoa.
orange,
Undignified pigment?
throw it under the bus, for some reason creates rage down into the depths of my soul. Its only purpose is to be used on construction sites and reflective vests, end quote.
God.
Ouch. Emily
Ouchies.
Ann.
All right. 1 out of 10, I guess.
Negative out of 10.
Negative 10 out of 10.
Wow. Thank you for sending that in. But to her defense, I can totally relate to grabbing the wrong crayon and ruining your masterpiece.
Okay.
It sucks because you can't erase it. You can't paint over it. Once you mess it
Yeah.
up, it's over.
All right, but fair. Like, I would so much rather an answer be very negative and elicit a response, because that means you're really paying attention to that color. I will take strong associations over milk toast associations any day of the week.
No nos gusta milk
No,
tosto.
gusto milk toasto, right.
No nos gusta.
However, Emily Ann, you may be contacted by the DayGlo Corporation Re-Education Retreat. If you see an unmarked van, be careful, okay? But we have no affiliation with them. All right. As always, you can find all the images on our website at artslicepod.com. You can find some of the images on our Instagram page, I guess, at artslicepod. And if you're feeling frisky, you can follow us on Tumblr, on TikTok, on Twitter, all at artslicepod. Chips! Oh my God, Stephanie, I didn't even recognize him. Chips, the overhead projector. Okay, Stephanie, did you see Chips has like a 70s era?
Motioning to the hair.
Yeah, he's got like the John Berger cut now. I love it. Okay. It's time for that hot new segment on Art Slice, the one the listeners have all been waiting for, called How We Perceive Color Chemically.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's right. But it's just the transcendent fluorescing of fluorescent pigment, okay? Which harnesses the power of the unseen to us.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Okay, yeah. Stephanie, you know how I like to brag about my olive glow whenever I'm out like mowing the yard for more than 20 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
And then like clockwork, I'm usually in pain, looking pretty pink.
Yeah, right.
Pretty in pink, yeah. And you are just like cool and golden and beautiful.
Wow, I don't know about that.
Well, that's because your body just activates the dormant melanin to protect yourself from ultraviolet light. And I don't have that within me. I just have to fend for myself. Okay.
because you're white?
It is.
Okay.
Ultraviolet light is just one of a range of wavelengths that we come across all the time, but do not see or hear or feel until the sunburn damage has been done, until you're pink and pasty like me, because our eyeballs have only bothered to evolve retinas for what is called, because we named it, the visible light spectrum. There is a world of colors we do not see that fall outside of that visible light spectrum.
many.
Bees and birds have the visible light plus package because they can see ultraviolet light. Mantis shrimp, however, which is neither a shrimp nor a mantis, our little brains would melt if we could see the briny sea in the way that a mantis shrimp sees it. Okay, they also see infrared and ultraviolet light, but it's kind of like a satellite vision. Like things are just blipping. They
Yeah.
see too much. I don't even know.
It's insane and intense.
But thankfully, we get a little taste of that brine, sans brain melt within fluorescent pigment.
Art Slice does not condone the tasting of delicious briny pigments.
Unless it's in like a Tide Pod like package.
No.
Okay.
No. Beep.
Which is uniquely adept at absorbing that very bright but invisible to us UV light, okay, ultraviolet light.
Right.
And melding it with colors our brain can recognize before radiating them back to us within the visible light spectrum. Now, as an extraordinarily bright physics physics fluorescence. That's so hard to say. You can think of these colors as little energy holding tanks doing double duty by saving up energy from both the visible spectrum and the ultraviolet spectrum, the
Dang.
UV spectrum, okay? So when we see them, part of what we are seeing is actually just that heavy load of energy that they're carrying. That's why they appear 200 to 300% brighter than normal, old, boring colors. That's why some of our listeners were angry at this color. Sometimes they make our eyes writhe around just a little bit because they're so bright.
My eyes. Ah. Sorry.
This isn't any different than what a normal color does, but the electrons in fluorescence just have that extra flash of energy. This is why they are used in the way they are used for sale signs, warning signs. The only analogy I can think of is that it's kind of like a fight or flight response. Your eye just goes to it instinctually.
Right.
Your brain can't help but let these colors grab your attention.
So let's get into the history of fluorescent pigments. It all begins in 1931 during the Great Depression.
I'm sorry, is Steve Paint Tuba part of this?
No.
I didn't. Okay.
No,
All right.
Steve Paint Tuba is nowhere in sight.
Okay. I don't like that, but okay.
Our story begins with two young brothers, Bob and Joe Switzer, moving all the way from small town Bromberg, Montana.
Montana is not where I thought you were going with that. Okay.
To Berkeley, California,
okay.
with their parents to help them open a pharmacy.
Okay, like a pharmacy with an F, you know?
No.
It has a little medic sign that's green and leafy.
No.
You get it because it's weed.
No, but listen, it's the middle of the Great Depression.
Okay, so a little weed would have helped. Or made things worse.
It depends, right?
Okay.
So Bob and Joe Switzer had quite different interests. The youngest brother, Joe, was interested in everything magic and performance, not like witchy magic or anything like that. This is more like Job from Arrested Development.
Okay.
Bobbert, the eldest, maybe took himself a little too seriously.
He's the Michael.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
He had earned a scholarship to study medicine at the University of California.
Okay.
His career goals were set, but maybe he was a little salty also because even though he was pre-med, his parents still needed his help earning some extra income because it was, again, the Great Depression. So Big Brain Bobbert gets a G-O-B.
Huh?
I messed that up. Beep. So Big Brain Bobbert gets a job doing quality control at a Heinz tomato processing facility.
Okay.
And Joe gets to stay home and pull handkerchiefs out of a
what?
secret place.
Okay,
I don't know.
okay.
Not any orifices. So you could say that Bob was seeing red because of the tomatoes,
Oh, okay. Oh,
but
okay.
also because he's salty.
Yeah,
and-
Okay.
Okay. It's not
Yeah.
funny.
No,
when I
no, it's good.
explain it. Okay.
No.
So Bob's quality control job was a blessing, right? It was extra income for the family, totally safe. Like, you're just collecting samples. Like, how dangerous can that be?
Right.
Says someone who's never done that before.
Yeah. Stephanie, salmonella. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's on all sorts of fruits and vegetables. You got to be careful.
It is?
Yeah. It can make you paralyzed.
Oh.
When the salmons travel north and they jump over the fields of lettuce and spinach, vegetables are dangerous.
Well, he's not like taste testing it.
Well, I don't know. It could like, cross-contaminate. I mean, you don't. Anyway, go on.
You're right. You never know.
I'm just saying.
Also, I've never
Death is
done
around
that.
every corner. Live your lives. Be free.
Yeah.
Keep on rocking in a free world.
Okay.
It's a bad time to say
All
this.
right. Okay. But actually, oh no. Then one day there was an accidente at the Heinz factory.
Major salmonella breakout.
No.
Okay.
Accidente occurs. He ends up with a fractured skull and some brain damage, okay?
Oh.
We got memory loss, a severed optic nerve.
Okay.
Believe it or not, this did not kill Bob.
Okay.
But he was devastated, okay?
right.
He could just kiss his medical career goodbye with these injuries.
Right.
All right, and as part of the recovery process, doctors are like, hey, you should probably like hang out in dark rooms
Okay.
or low light situations.
All right. Rest those optic nerves. Okay.
Yeah, and now, younger brother Joe, maybe he's feeling a little guilty. So he goes in there to visit him and wants to entertain him with his magic tricks. Because after all, now he has an audience to practice on.
He's a captive audience.
I guess.
Okay. He's just I just imagine his whole face kind of bandaged.
Oh
They-
my God.
They cut out like a little square for his one good eye, and of course a little hole for like a sippy
A straw?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's like that terrified eye. It's like
It's mostly white.
yeah.
Wait, what was that noise you just made?
Because he doesn't want to watch magic. Like most people in the world, he doesn't want to watch magic.
All right, so this is when Bob and Joe realized that they had a shared interest in fluorescence. And as I say this, I'm like, maybe Bob was just nodding along.
Or he's shaking his head no, but he's got that neck brace thing on and he can't turn it that way.
Okay. All right. Now, during this time in the 1930s, the only way you could see natural fluorescence, whether it was in a rock found in nature or a Renaissance painting in a museum, was through a UV light, aka a black light. So black lights had just been invented, and Joe probably got his hands on one because magic, And they begin testing things to see if they fluoresce under a black light. And I know what you're thinking, you dirty bird. birds. And I can say that because I'm a dirty bird. And I can neither confirm nor deny what it is that you're thinking.
Well, Stephanie, you can't hide your sin from black lights, okay? The black lights emit UV light that we normally wouldn't be able to see, but through the magic of science that we, Stephanie and Russell, do not understand.
Not all the time.
They appear purple to our eyes, and that's because it's the closest color to where the UV light spectrum begins.
So, in the dark, with no other light except for UV, fluorescent objects will suddenly present themselves to you. Their fluorescent parts will glow.
Yeah.
Eventually, they decide to test the pharmaceuticals that they had access to through their family's pharmacy, and they found several, actually, that fluoresced under UV light. A lot of those ointments, they glow.
In the back of the pharmacy, grinding up some poor guy's nitrate medicine.
All right, so Bob and Job begin experimenting, okay? They're mixing different combinations of fluorescent materials, paints, and resins to add some never-before-seen pizzazz to Job's amateur magic shows.
Okay.
So people loved Job's magic show. They were like, hey, maybe we can make some dinero off of this. And they start to dip their toes into merchandising where they would project UV light onto displays that they had coated with their fluorescent concoctions.
Yeah, that's gross.
Who's a dirty bird now? All right, so eventually they moved on to movie posters, but by the 1940s, Bob and Job started to see the limitations of relying so heavily on blacklights. All right, so how can they make fluorescence fluoresce in the daytime without a blacklight?
That's the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
One day, Bob and Job stumbled upon a method to make daylight fluorescent pigments when they dipped silk fabric into a combo of alcohol and fluorescent dye.
Okay.
I think they were working on making Job a fluorescent silk kerchief for his magic show.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, bingo, baby. That's bright.
Ouchies. It glows.
My peepers. So now they can make materials glow in broad daylight. No black lights required.
Okay.
So Bob and Job LLC, because they're an LLC now, they named their company DayGlo. No W at the end. And these pigments were known as DayGlo fluorescents. And listeners, we promise, I hope it's obvious, we were not paid by DayGlo.
Yeah, it will be if, we might be sued by them later, though. So.
Cease and desist.
Yeah.
You would know about that.
I would.
Okay, so just like when magenta was invented, listeners, DayGlo's first customers were the military. It's the middle of World War II, and the U.S. military was lining up to get their hands on some of that DG, okay, for their aircrafts and troops, both paint and fabric, basically to avoid friendly fire.
But also to scare away the German army because they're from the Black Forest with the dark chocolate.
No.
Hanzo!
Oh, no.
Hanzo, yes, they have harnessed the witch-like power of the sun. The brightness of dewy gumdrops. Quickly back in the van, put on the Einstein Stender Neubauten playlist. Sorry, go on.
Okay. So all of this eventually led to high-vis safety uniforms and equipment that we are all familiar with. Construction gear, safety vests, crossing signs, warning signs, etc., etc. After DayGlo warfare in 1950, they saw the troops in their high-vis safety vests and thought,
what would that look like on a butt? Right? what would that high-vis safety vest look like as a underwear garment?
On some buttocks. Well, okay, so DayGlo made their debut into fashion with fluorescent yarn, first in new plaids, which the company described as spun light that literally blaze with the luminous intensity of a Highland sunrise.
Okay, all right.
I want to wear a Scottish sunrise.
You want to wear a Scottish sunrise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where the Highlands are, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that where plaid comes from?
That sounds like some sort of mystic cult thing. Like you go out naked into the Highlands.
Okay, well now you ruined it. Now I don't want to wear a sunset on myself. Right. Okay, but then there was also sexy lingerie.
Okay, yeah. Okay. It's gonna burn your bum, isn't it?
So you're right.
Yeah.
It did not take off.
Okay.
But the 1960s weren't that far away, and the counterculture would use the shit out of DayGlo fluorescent inks. However, hippies and posters and militaries be damned, Tide detergent was one of the first to adapt to using fluorescent fluorescent packaging.
Of course. And as many of you have pointed out, what happens in the supermarket does not escape one Andy Warhol. Always lurking in the grocery store aisles. Sometimes, you maybe move a cereal box and you see his little glasses peeking out from behind.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're walking by a display case of baked beans and you give it a second look. Like, did I just see a white furry tuft of hair?
Wait, what?
Okay. He was the first to use DayGlo in a, quote, fine art piece with his iconic 1962 Maryland diptych and soon after his flowers composition.
Right. And then the Beatles would soon after sear the eyes of 2.5 million people with their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band cover, having it printed with DayGlo ink, solidifying DayGlo's place in history, in pop culture, forever. And by the 1980s, this brightness had infiltrated globally. You could find it everywhere, as listener and patron Ben C., thank you, Ben, pointed out the legendary Manchester club Hacienda with its DayGlo hazard stripes and fluorescent lighting, looking like a factory turned club.
Well, it's factory records, so yeah.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Where back in the day, you could catch bands like New Order or Madonna on the right day.
Madonna haunts us. Okay. Ben, I love seeing this on here, though, and I'm very sorry for all my horrible British accents. But a certain ratio is like an all-time favorite band of mine, so love seeing that here.
This fluorescent craze carried into the 90s, and it was a staple of raves.
Yeah, I love 1990s rave posters.
You love posters.
Beautiful. Yeah, I do. I really do.
And eventually, you see fluorescent colors in celebrity hair like Gwen Stefani's and Lil' Kim's.
Little Kim, yes. Little Kim.
No, she's not little.
Kim.
Lil' Kim. And more... And more than a few of you noticed correctly that these late 90s, early aughts trends are creeping back up on us
They're
again.
haunting us, Stephanie.
They are.
They're full-on haunting us. Actually, though, we're not done with the history segment, Stephanie, because look at this. DayGlo is slowly dying. Look here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at those DayGlo pigments. Once bright eye-crossing hues, they're mellowing. Around the time Andy Warhol was working with DayGlo, so many other artists were also picking up pigments and dyes to experiment with. And just like that fugitive color we talked about in the last LDCTC episode, what was that guy's name? With the milky, pale people that looked like they were about to fall over.
Oh my
God. The royalties, what was his name?
Oh, Joshua Reynolds.
Yeah. Okay, so we are now starting to see certain hues of fluorescent paint lose their punch, rendering them just normal. Okay, a lot of pigments do this over time, like we said with Joshua Reynolds. Depending on how much light they are exposed to, the quality and chemical compounds of the material used, sometimes this is mitigated by art conservators who preserve and even touch up works so that they stay close to their original appearance. And if a work is just beyond repair, or the conservators do a total botch job, hopefully you'll at least have a photograph from the glory days. But fluorescent paint is unique in that, first of all, no camera is going to capture that extra spectral slap, okay? Slap, don't slap in photographs.
Okay.
And then that the proprietary formulas behind DayGlo's paint is kept under the DayGlo pink lock and key, right? And let's think about this for a second. In the grand scheme of things, this is a really new type of paint.
Yeah.
And conservators don't have the centuries of trial and error to fall back on like they would with your typical oil or bronze. And while they might be happy to sell them the colors of 60 years ago, it's unlikely that the formula is going to be 100% the same formula.
Right.
And you can't just paint over old paint with new paint anyway, especially with a paint as complex as fluorescent, since this is a particularly unique pigment. I would argue that DayGlo is now part of history, and history is it's bigger than one company.
Yeah.
So if there is no law requiring them to work with these conservators, they should feel at the very least morally obligated to do so.
Seriously?
And remember, artists use DayGlo specifically for its ability to make your eyes twitch, okay? So the intent of their work is slowly being lost with time.
Yeah, that's really sad. And too bad. Too bad, too sad. Let's get into the characteristics of fluorescent yellow. Generally speaking, fluorescent yellow is yellow. As listener Rotem summed up our thoughts nicely with their descriptor, neon lemon.
I also think of lemon, a bright, ever so slightly leaning towards green yellow. Almost a chartreuse, similar to the aptly named neon pothos plant.
Your favorite.
One of my faves, yeah.
And we definitely saw that green skew in your answers, listeners, in some of the most common associations like safety gear, highlighters, and tennis balls. Many of these are even further together on their pathway towards green.
And we should say here, the word neon and fluorescent are often used interchangeably. In fact, we use them interchangeably all the time, but they are technically different due to their chemical makeup.
Now, the question of whether this is a warm or cool color, just like with magenta, is kind of up for debate.
Yellow, typically always a warm, but because of that extra slap and its proclivity to lean towards green, I tend to think of this color as having like a cool electric warmth, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes, same. A sunny day with a cool breeze, maybe a little lightning.
A little lightning with no clouds? Okay, I like that. Yeah. It can go either way, and depending on which hue you are looking at.
Huey Lewis. Okay. Now, for synthetic versus organic, this is about as synthetic as a color can come. It's lab born and raised, and rightfully, we perceive this as synthetic.
However, a lot of you listeners pointed out that there are natural colors that also have a glow. They just don't have that extra glowy slap, right? But they are still super eye-catching.
Listener and patron Saint Henry, thank you, your saintliness, mentioned turmeric.
Yeah.
And turmeric contains a property, curcumin, that not only glows in UV light, but also stains your Tupperware.
And much like turmeric, fluorescent pigments pack a lasting punch. Stephanie, it's our first story time. We asked you listeners to all do a story, if you wanted to, or a poem about fluorescent yellow. So here we go. Here's the first one.
Okay, this one is courtesy of @Bebop's Bubble Bath. Thank you, Bebops.
And look, I realize in the questionnaire, we didn't say that the story needed to be a true story, but I am really hoping this is a true story because I love it so much.
Quote, my mom used to tell me this story of my grandfather being so cheap that he refused to spend money on paint. He was so cheap that one day he convinced the road construction workers down the street to give him their leftover traffic
This
paint.
needs to be a novel.
Okay.
I need to know how he approached them, how he won their confidence,
Okay.
how he convinced them, what kind of hair they had. What did he chat about? Was it like, oh, what kind of lunch are you having today? Oh, that looks good. How about that fluorescent paint in there? I'll take it.
We have a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but I'm going to continue.
Okay.
So, yes, fluorescent yellow road paint for the living room, hallway, kitchen.
Yes. This is the greatest generation, Stephanie.
Yeah.
This is the greatest generation. This is why so many, not all boomers, of course, but a lot of boomers are fucked up because they had to live in the shadows of these giants that would just go to speak to people and convince them to give them their fluorescent paint.
Okay, so he was so proud of the deal he got free, right? Until after a week, he realized how bright fluorescent yellow really was.
Yes. Well, I guess if he waits like 60-ish years, it'll start to lose its vibrancy.
Maybe.
So just hang in there.
Maybe. For the first few weeks, he tried diluting it with white, which ended up not working so well in his favor either.
Bebops, I relate to your granddaddy so hard.
And you didn't.
So hard.
You didn't even know why.
I was just like, I relate to this man.
You were like, you were just so feeling the story. I'm like, wait, that was you, Russell.
Yeah, okay. I didn't remember this, but okay, so I had all this leftover printer ink, okay, that wouldn't work with my new printer.
I was not home.
So I took the yellow. And like, I've been painting for like, 10 years at this point. So I'm thinking like, I can handle this. I mixed like a teaspoon of the yellow paint in with like, not a gallon, maybe like a half gallon of white. I knew it was going to be strong. I knew it was going to be a strong color, but I just wanted a yellow door. That's all I wanted.
Great plan.
Okay. And look, you wanted the yellow door too. Don't blame it all.
Did,
okay. Yeah, exactly.
But not the I don't know. I questioned the way we did it.
So that shit was so powerful. The door, it like soaked into the cheap MDF door.
You tattooed the door.
And I realized I also hated the color of this door now. So I'm like going to paint over it, right?
Yeah, no big deal.
So layer after layer after layer after layer of primer and sealer paint, but it would still look just as strong as it did before. It's like
stronger.
It's like the fresh paint reinvigorated the pigments. And the whole time I'm just thinking to myself, God damn, I fucked up. But
you would not.
I fucked up, but I don't want to admit this. So eventually I had to paint the door black. But it it's been 2 years and it's like a peachy black now. So the yellow still, it remains basically. It's still there in all of this.
This is all to say, beware of your pigments, folks. There are some powerful ones out there. You learned your lesson.
It did.
And speaking of, golden acrylic paint famously makes a variety of different fluorescent paints, and Gapka makes oil versions, and both straight out of the tube tend to have varying degrees of translucency.
And if you don't want that translucency, an all-time favorite paint of mine are the flat enamel versions used for painting signs back in the day. So it dries quick, smooth, opaque. However, that's basically all it does, right? It only does the one thing, and it does that one thing really well.
The straight-up DayGlo version of this color is most likely Saturn Yellow. The Pantone version is Safety Yellow. And the Pantone version actually looks pretty decent, unlike their magentas and Viridian, air quotes.
Digitally speaking.
Digital.
You can't really recreate that UV energy loaded glow, so you have to use tricks of the eye instead, such as contrasting colors around your quote neon, maybe think some ambient grays to make it appear a little bit brighter, right?
There are painters who actually also do this, and I couldn't help but think of a Dana Schutz work that I saw as an art student.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And yes, back in 2017, Dana, a white woman...
Really stepped in it.
Oh, yes. She made a painting based on a historic and horrific racially motivated murder of a young Black boy. As non-Black allies, we see that she wanted to use her platform for good, but it wasn't well thought out.
Yeah, it's a big learning moment.
But anyway, back to this totally different, unrelated work. I looked at it first, listeners. I was entranced by the colors from across the room, super pigmented reds, pinks, purples, greens, and of course, yellows. But I soon realized this was not a painting about fun, but instead, a kid's picnic gone horribly wrong. These kids are slicing away at another figure on this checkered picnic table. And the figure on the table looks betrayed. It's a disturbing work, but she puts these seemingly contrary colors together to make the work punch you even harder, not slap, punch. But the way that she works wet on wet softens the blow.
It's like a children's book palette in a way.
Yes.
The way she's using bright, contrasting colors makes it look like the table is a bright chemical yellow, but it's dampened by the sunlight.
Yes.
It's really beautiful. So it's outside, and you think like nothing could ever go wrong outside, right? And there are bits of fluorescent colors hidden within the work, so that triggers our instinct to keep looking at it.
Yes. And
she's an incredible painter.
She's a great painter, and the name of the work is actually Surgery. So I wasn't far off. Like we always say, it pays not to read the plaque first.
Our Pantrémons have handed us a clipboard filled with your answers, listeners. Let's get into it.
Question number 1. What are your immediate thoughts when you look at fluorescent yellow? Russell, why don't you lead us off this time?
Fluorescophilia.
Okay.
Fluorescophilia. Fluorescophilia. Yeah. It's exactly what it sounds like. I think I've always had a bit of it.
Okay.
I had a stockpile of fluorescent toys, t-shirts, really anything I found at garage sales as a kiddo. We went to a lot of garage sales. Okay?
Same.
I don't think it really mattered what it was, but if it was like, quote, neon, then I was totally down.
You're one of those.
Yeah. So I picked up a fluorescent green monster truck t-shirt. Had no interest in trucks, normal, or monster. Okay. I found these muscle troll action figures. Also didn't like the trolls. With bright mohawks. Basically anything, right? It was all over the place in the 90s. So then, in college, I thought I was edgy, Stephanie.
Oh, God.
You know, you do. So I wore thrifted safety shirts with white skinny jeans.
You wore fluorescent tops with white bottoms.
So you know those like safety t-shirts with like the reflective material and then the fluorescent dyes. Basically the color we're talking about now.
Eyesore. You were an eyesore.
Yeah, with dirty white skinny jeans.
Dirty.
With paint splattered all over them, probably ripped.
Okay.
They weren't good jeans, cheap jeans. So they had like holes in the crotch. Anyway.
Oh, God.
And like through art school, I painted on fluorescent plexiglass. I worked with neon installations. I would spray paint things. I would dye resins. None of it turned out well. It just didn't have that feeling I wanted to convey, but I knew I wanted to use that material.
Okay.
And at Isabel.thehumanperson actually mentioned fireflies, which right on board with you. One night I remember taking a break from studio and I had this moment where I was all alone. That's the best time to really think because you're not being distracted. And I saw all these fireflies, something that you see often, light up at dusk. And that just solved the problem for me. So to this day, I've gotten a lot better about using it. I still love fluorescent materials, but I keep them in check, I would say, much like the fireflies. Just little flashes. What about you?
Ooh, I like that. I first really started noticing glowing safety construction construction equipment, actually not that long ago, as we were driving through the desert.
I remember this, yeah.
There was just something so magical about that neon zest in a desert landscape.
Totally
of like
agree.
earth tones that just like, I don't know. It just spoke to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this came during a much needed break. I was working retail before the pandemic and then immediately after the quarantine was lifted. Let's just say it was extremely stressful to go to work every day and deal with belligerent anti-maskers trying to prove a point, just trying to do my job. So on this road trip, there was a lot of construction and I would see fluorescent orange cones, netting, highway paint, signs, and it was really cool to see it transform throughout the day and night, rain or shine.
It was just the perfect time to see it because there weren't a lot of people out on the road. It was
Yes, kind of like you and the fireflies, actually.
Yeah.
I've also had a neon orange beanie for years that Russell thinks he stole.
Here we go again, listeners.
He's claimed it as his own.
I bought that beanie.
You didn't.
I purchased that beanie.
I literally have receipts.
Maybe you bought the same beanie as me and I thought it was mine.
No.
It was my beanie.
No.
All right.
You go away on a trip
Yeah.
and then I see you on Instagram
Stretch it out with
wearing
my
it,
big ass head. Look, I can't wear this beanie anymore. You stretched it out.
and I threw it at you.
So rude.
So anyway, I let him wear it now, and when I don't mind a loose beanie on my head, I will wear it.
We're gonna find two beanies one day, and one's gonna be a little bit faded.
We're not.
We are.
No, we're not.
Whatever.
You're gonna buy one and then like fake it. Anyway, I let Russell think you stole it, but I've slowly noticed fluorescent accessories creeping into my wardrobe. I mean, I consciously do it. It's just been happening, let's be honest. Scrunchies, hair clips, nail polish, it's definitely grown on me.
So listeners, your answers for the questions can really be split into two categories. One is like the eye-catching and the experiential, found often within consumer goods or services. As to be expected, we live in America.
America.
Things that fluorescent paint was literally made for, from probably DayGlo, right? And the other is like the surprise moment of something that is maybe technically not fluorescent, but ultra bright and, quote, natural, right? And that contrast is really clear within Jessica and St. Henry's answers.
Jessica at Eureka_coffee said, sexy, seductive, toxicity, retro wave, translucent plastic jewelry from the 80s and 90s, long nails, planetariums, arcades, black lights, laser tag, just all over being young.
Compared to St. Henry, who mentioned bright, warm, sour, sunflowers, dandelions, lemons, candy, juice, and pigment festivals.
Yeah.
And Hunter at the World of Hunter Lewis also had two of my favorite answers I think ever. Quote, aggressive happiness and toxic pee. So I guess being too aggressive with your happiness, with that fake ass happiness, and your pee is going to turn toxic.
Okay.
Like you've just taken a ton of B vitamins because that would make you aggressively happy. Maybe. Okay.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Never happened to me.
Okay.
Speaking of at the World of Hunter Lewis, a lot of you listeners mentioned tennis balls, of course, but both Hunter and Tara at pickledog_art mentioned specifically the fuzzy feeling and chemical smell found after cracking open a fresh can. But tennis has been around way before the invention of fluorescent dyes, actually back in the 1800s, where they would use either black or white tennis balls.
Okay.
Which was all fine and good until color television became more available to the public. And suddenly, the color upgrade actually meant that folks at home would have a really hard time following where the ball was. Literally, it would get lost in the image of the crowd
The
or
blinding
the white.
reflection of the queen's pale skin. Anyway, go on.
I was going to say also the white tennis court
Yeah, all
lines.
right.
So eventually, in the early 70s, the International Tennis Federation gave in and approved the fluorescent color called optic yellow for all televised tennis
So
balls.
your optics can see it.
However, the most famous tennis sporting event location, Wimbledon, held out until 1986. They like their white balls.
Yeah, they're trying to catch on with those hip 80s kids and their complicated neon shoes.
They were a little late, though.
And we have another story/poem, this time courtesy of St. Henry.
I dip my tips into fluorescent yellow, and my mouth waters. Sour air, like lemons, rakes my taste buds. Like hornet stings, bundled on my tongue, like corn kernels, and with a flicker, I pucker. Question number 2. Outside of art, do you associate this color with any memories?
Stephanie, do you want to lead us off this time?
Yes. Yes. An early memory for me is being at Food for Less, your typical SoCal grocery chain.
The Pizza Patron close by. Always.
No,
always,
I didn't
always.
go to that one. As a kid, I looked down at the ground a lot, which is where I first noticed shoes, which was an
Makes sense.
early sign of a problem for me. So on one of these grocery trips with my mom, instead of being helpful, because I wander off, I can't tell you how many times I got lost.
Wander off all the time.
I won't talk about it. Anyway, I noticed some tennis balls on this old lady's walker, and I thought...
Slowly walking across the court in Wimbledon.
No.
Excuse me, Naomi.
Someone better tell this lady that she has a ball stuck to her walker. How embarrassing. Or she just loved tennis so much, she had to steal a ball and take it home with her.
Yeah.
But also she ruined the balls.
Yeah.
She had to cut it open and put her walker. Anyway, it also reminds me of construction workers and getting catcalled by them. It used to trigger me, okay, the catcalling, but also the fluorescent yellow, but not anymore because now I'm stronger than yesterday because I love this color now, okay?
Yeah.
I've overcome it. It's one of my faves.
So if we had met when I was in school.
No, I would have avoided you. I'm sorry.
It would have been hard because I was wearing this stupid neon shirt. Okay.
Out of my periphery.
So this is not exactly catcalling, but the Viridian Killer, welcome back VK, said one New Year's Eve party, my cousin and I were making fun of my aunt looking like a crossing guard because she had a bright fluorescent green hoodie on. Maybe her New Year's resolution was to finally get that crossing guard job that she'd wanted for years.
God.
She's like pumping herself up. She's like, I'm going to get it this year.
Oh my God.
This kind of chaos is much needed in our society. You're contributing.
Speaking of dressing up in costume, not that your aunt was dressing up as a crossing guard or anything, BK. At Ezreal's Art says, my dad was a chemist and used to work on nuclear submarines in the early 90s. For Halloween, he used a hazmat suit from his place of work for his costume. It was bright fluorescent yellow. Then my mom used some kind of glow-in-the-dark substance to make his skin glow.
Uranium daddy.
Yeah, basically.
At Eureka_coffee was on her game with these answers. Quote, it reminds me of the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk in the 80s/90s. There were a lot of dark rides where they heavily utilized fluorescent paints, including the Back in Time Caveman ride. We looked into this ride. Recently renovated to its former glory, and it is a DayGlo bootleg baby from dinosaurs acid trip. God damn. Fluorescent drumsticks?
Yeah.
I need to go here. This is amazing.
This shit is trippy. And listeners, keep in mind that Russell has never been to an amusement park. He's never been to Disneyland. Nope. This would mean a lot to him.
Yeah, and we did put the link of an HD video on our website.
Someone's video I found.
Yeah.
At Fiash98 described a scene which made me laugh. I saw a fluorescent caution sign perfectly in the center of a reflective window, and because I was laughing, I couldn't steady my camera and accidentally took an extremely overexposed picture. The photo came out almost completely white, hazy, and in the center, a very faint fluorescent yellow caution sign, end quote.
Those unexpected moments are exactly what fuels work sometimes, though. Like, this is why it's important not to, just be nose down in your phone or analog book all the time. Like, you need to articulate your experience with the world around you because it is full of surprises, and those surprises can show up in your art later.
And no shade to TikTok or, I don't know, like Emily Dickinson, but these are experiences that you'll never experience otherwise. Both John from Osmanthus.press and Brooke say they're reminded of long cross-country trips. For Brooke, it's driving through tourist trappy towns and staring at all the Gleon.
Love Gleon.
All of the glowing neon signs at night. For John, it's a different type of glow. Quote, the canola seed fields stick out as memory touchstones from a bus trip across the northwest Hunan province.
Hunan province has those hills and sandstone pillars / peaks that you see often in traditional Chinese scroll paintings or avatar.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
They look like they're not of this world.
And those canola fields, they really glow when the light hits them.
They really do. I want to go there. Let's go there.
Listeners, we have another poem / story, this time courtesy of Amanda. Abrasive in daylight, but under the influence with blacklight, softer and more complex.
Question number 3. Does it remind you of any artworks, packaging, pop cultural items?
Ben recalls, quote, tearing off the plastic wrapper on Factory Records LPs and carefully sliding the vinyl out of a yellow and black sleeve so harsh it almost hurts the eyes, which that was probably designed by the legendary Peter Saville, I can't say it without the accent, sorry, who has influenced just a multitude of designers. You know, the Joy Division shirt you love, Stephanie?
Yeah.
That's him.
Oh.
Yeah. His work uses, despite the Joy Division t-shirt, his work uses a lot of bright, eye-catching colors and patterns that are kind of a little bit chaotic. And honestly, he is like a little bit more of an interesting soul of wit, if that makes sense.
Oh.
Like,
Ouchies.
I mean, they aren't on walls. He's not selling the instructions to make them. They're in packaging, on posters, all that sort of stuff. But the general appearance is sometimes similar, but he is way less static, way more colorful, way more interesting to look at, in my opinion.
Well, way more edgy, especially for graphic design.
Yeah.
Unanimous mentioned the 7 Magic Mountains outside of Las Vegas by Ugo Rondinone. Love those. Rotem mentioned contemporary painter Haley Josephs, who mixes in fluorescent paints into her surreal oil paintings.
Wasn't familiar with her work. She is dabbling with figurative illustration, painterly figurative illustration like Carrie James Marshall or Neil Rausch, but with like a trashy Lisa Frank palette. And I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah. At Fiosh98 mentioned that she always thinks of photos with long exposures and trying to capture that light.
I've always thought of that as sort of a movement history of that light, sort of like a trailing footprint. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Love it.
And speaking of, I guess, of a trailing footprint, John mentioned Kelty Ferris, who makes paintings that look like a distant city with out of focus fluorescent lights in the backgrounds. It also kind of looks like dusty old electric Moroccan rugs, if that makes any sense at all. That's how I would describe it. So fluorescent Moroccan rugs lit, but with a bunch of dust on them.
That's a very specific image, and I really like it. I'm into it. At Ezreal's Art was smart to point out Basquiat, who used UV reactive blacklight crayons in his paintings. So
cool,
invisible to us without that UV light shining on them. So his motifs are hidden in some of his paintings.
Okay.
And of course, the answer we saw the most frequently, apart from one grocery store lurker, Andy Warhol, was Dan Flavin, who is most well known for using industrial fluorescent lights in his sculptures and installations. And we love us some Dan Flavin around here.
We do. Dan right.
We do. But there were other artists, believe it or not, who used fluorescent light and paint in the 60s and 70s.
Say it ain't so, Steph.
It is. Greek-born artist Laura Grisi ran in the same circles as fluorescent art canon giants like Dan Flavin and Frank Stella, but art history seems to have overlooked her.
You can thank the Art History Brain Trust.
Yeah. In the 60s, she was also using fluorescent lighting and DayGlo paint, but her work had meaning way beyond just the beauty of those materials.
And unlike Frank Stella's work, and I'm not sure it's fair to say the same for Dan Flavin's, I don't think he's like this. These are not a one-way street. Instead of just looking at her work, you quickly find your place within them. Because you've been to these places before. You've seen these places before, just not in this way.
She shares a lot with Daddy. Oh my God!
Daddy DeCarico!
No!
You said Daddy DeCarico!
No. Damn it. Okay. Real talk. She shares a lot with DeCarico
yes.
in that way. Fluorescent blades of grass, neon sunsets locked behind glass, blurry television sets, clubs that you can catch a glimpse of as you walk by them. It's a beautiful, bright world, but you also feel detached. She was just so aware of how every space we inhabit has been designed for us to behave or feel a certain way.
That gives me the ennui, as we say, Stephanie. Like, you've had a good career, you live in a beautiful condo, but you just live day in and day out in these structures of productivity. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just a playground for you to live out your life in.
Right.
It gives me serious ennui.
I see.
Serious ennui.
I see that.
Yeah.
But I also think that there is some positivity to her work because you're in the position of someone who has realized this and is choosing to open the window. Speaking of fluorescence and its ability to excite you, to electrify you, but to also give you that ennui you mentioned earlier and maybe a migraine.
So Laura Greasy's work made me think of Peter Halley. A quick look at Peter Halley's work and you might think we live in a reality where Joseph Albers wandered into the DayGlo factory, refused to leave, locked himself in there, and then they had to send in a whole team of people to kind of lure him out, anyway.
Yeah, this work is aggressively
It's aggro.
Bright.
Yeah.
Like many of you pointed out, listeners, that DayGlo brightness can take an eerie turn. Like these start to remind you of shopping centers and giant for sale signs.
Low interest rates. We finance here. Bag of snacks, $2.99.
Free puppy with your purchase. I don't know. Sorry.
On the surface, these are clusters of bright geometric shapes. Like when I first saw them, I thought this guy was just an extraordinary colorist. Mm-hmm. But then you notice he's using popcorn ceiling texture throughout the work, which is used to prevent echoes in housing. Okay, weird choice, right?
Yeah.
Not the weirdest choice for contemporary artwork, but we'll keep looking.
Oh, we're in little rooms.
Yeah, these are little rooms. Then the claustrophobia kicks in, Stephanie. And these groupings of geometric shapes start to look like suburban developments, microchips, stacked condos, stacked prison cells too. I mean, clearly these are jail bars, right? Let me look at these.
Yeah.
And there is this anxiety of either being watched or watching a world entrapped within these playful colors.
Technology and surveillance.
Gotta love it. So I said I was a fluorescophiliac.
Yeah.
Okay. And I stand by that, Stephanie. Actually, Stephanie, ask me what my favorite fluorescent is.
Russell, what is your favorite fluorescent?
It is when there is a fluorescent sign.
Okay.
And it is weathered with time. And it's so faded and brittle that pieces have fallen off.
Oh.
And you just get that like faded highlighter underglow.
Oh.
There's just a little bit of an echo there still.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Fluorescent Echo.
Fluorescent Echoes.
Hell yeah.
That's my band name.
Love it.
Don't take it, listeners. You can't have it. It's mine.
Patent that shit, as we say here. As we say around these parts, patent that shit. So, you have not been swayed to Emily's view on fluorescent color.
No, I have not. Not yet. But I have seen the dark side of this material. And Emily Ann is right. It is so obviously a facade, right?
It was made in a lab.
Yeah. And I go back to being 17 and 4 hours and one energy drink, maybe 2 energy drinks, into my overnight stalker shift in Walmart in the middle of like swamp-ass Missouri.
Ugh.
You're tired. There's a literal ceiling sky above you. Yes. A sky of like 6K Kelvin fluorescent bulbs glowing up these fluorescent, I don't know, like windshield wiper fluid packages.
It's oppressive.
And your coworkers are bumming cigarettes and asking for a ride home at the end of the night. So part of fluorescence appeal to me is that it is this stunning art tool, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a very unique tool that you can utilize in so many different ways. But it's also this reminder that we're all cogs in a greater society of just relentless consumption.
Right, but also that we need to get out of that coggery.
Yeah,
and
because it has that transcendent side of it too, right?
Yes. All right. So we've left two of the most interesting answers for last. At Bebop's Bubble Bath says, Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer, 1, a.k.a. Gustav Klimt's The Golden Lady.
Okay.
And a person who left their name blank said, Van Gogh's famous Sunflower and Cafe Terrace at night paintings and paintings of Jesus always have a fluorescent yellow glow or halo.
Both of these are luminescent before fluorescent existed, right? For Gustav, it's the patterning and material that maybe doesn't draw your attention 70% faster than other colors, but it certainly has that immersive glow, right?
Oh my God, yes. And it's the same for Jesus, but when you look at him, the halo radiance is like a guilt zap. Zap.
And for Van Gogh, for using nothing fluorescent, nothing glittery like gold leaf, he gets so hyper detailed and crisp and bluish at times with his paint that it feels like he's actually painting under fluorescent lights. Like he was just seeing things so differently.
He was ahead of his time and sciences.
Okay, listeners, here's another poem/story, this time courtesy of the Viridian Killer. Oh, fluorescent yellow, how I ignored you all these years, not knowing your chromatic importance. How I wished I wore you more, expanding my wardrobe, color palette. You, right now, stare at me in the Planet Fitness sign. That's good, thanks.
And then they said, I didn't edit this, by the way. It's important to note. Question number 4. What would you spray paint entirely in fluorescent yellow?
Stephanie, how about you lead us off here?
Our windowless bathroom. Okay. Shocking. Shocking. It's very small and it's kind of wonko because it's
Well, okay, so we were very lucky to find a place at all that
Yes.
some property investment bro hadn't claimed for themselves
Yes,
yet.
seriously.
Yeah, and
seriously.
put their like Under Armour Ed Hardy jean polo flag in. Oh God, fuck those guys.
Seriously. But if I were to spray paint that nasty closet-sized bathroom, I might look forward to going in there. I dread it otherwise.
Yeah, but it's got to be like high gloss though. I think like an infinite reflective fluorescent funhouse.
I don't need to see myself on the can, though. You know what I'm saying?
But I mean, it wouldn't be you, but it would be you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It'd
I
be you
don't-
from another dimension. You in the fluorescent dimension.
I don't want to meet anybody. I just want to get in there and not hate it.
At Spicy Witch Soup says they would do their ceiling.
Yes.
Yes, paint your fucking ceiling. That sounds amazing. Do it. And
Yes.
your jewelry, your handmade jewelry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. That
Yeah,
would
totally.
be so rad.
That would be super rad.
Do it. Do it.
Silicone fluorescent variations of your jewelry. That's what we demand it.
Nicely.
Viridian Killer says, my dark, black, Viridian killing soul.
Yes.
Okay. She didn't say the Viridian killing killer. That was me. I improvised.
I feel that, Viridian Killer. I feel it. At Eureka_coffee says, my wedding dress, my hair,
Ooh.
my nails.
Nice.
Yes, yes, yes. I say yes, yes, yes. Sorry, stealing that. For our wedding, I made a Mylar bouquet, but if we ever have that wedding party that we put
yeah.
off because of COVID, there's definitely going to be some fluorescent yellow action happening.
Yeah, no, I'm down. As long as I don't have to wear a fluorescent suit.
We're going to give you fluorescent yellow frosted tips.
Okay.
Just for me,
Okay.
for one day. We'll shave your head the next day. It's fine. Speaking of fluorescent yellow accents, Amanda took it further and said Roman column accent pieces, a mirror frame, a heel of a platform boot. Yes, I will definitely be doing the heel thing.
Love that.
Some of you want to do the whole ass object, all of it. St. Henry said a banana. And at Fiash98, a spray paint can.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, snake eating tail, spray paint can, spraying itself with the infinite cycle of birth, life, death. Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. Love it.
At Mermaid Queen _ simply said a car.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
Hope the windshield is included.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And then at Madison's.notebook up the ante and said that she would spray paint my dad's car as a prank because he hates yellow.
I love it. You all are doing crimes. I'm for it.
Emily Ann
Oh, she's back.
would make an exception for fluorescent yellow's use.
Okay.
Quote, if I had an enemy, I would spray paint their entire car for revenge. End quote. Okay, so
lot of cars.
you know someone has seriously wronged Emily Ann because remember,
If she's going to push that rage down.
it creates rage from the depths of
Yeah.
her soul. Gray said she would spray paint a whole
Yes.
tennis court. Would make the
Yes.
game much more
Yes.
difficult.
Yes.
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 Make-
This is the best answer. Yes.
Brooke says she would spray paint my 4th grade teacher's classroom. She was obsessed with smiley faces and hung up pictures of them
Oh,
everywhere.
no.
So I think the color would emphasize the nightmare fuel.
That's like
Damn.
the DayGlo re-education camp we were talking about.
Oh my God. Ben C says he would spray paint tree stumps in an empty field
Yes.
somewhere.
Like you just find them when you're out hiking.
I guess so.
Oh my God, that's perfect.
I love that. Ben,
Yeah.
go apply for a grant somewhere. Have someone pay you.
You don't
to
even
go.
need a grant. Just I need 1 grant for 1 gallon of DayGlo paint. We'll find you a grant, Ben, if you want to do that. We'll be your grant writers.
When you do that, Ben, because I think you're going to do that, please take a picture and then send it to us.
Give us the geo coordinates. so
I
we
need
can
that to
find
be
it.
framed.
Yeah.
Also, yes, we're going to find it.
Make it kind of hard though.
Wait, like a
it's
treasure
yeah,
map.
like it's a treasure map. Yeah.
Find the tree stumps.
And last but not least, listeners, we have one more Fluorescent Yellow final story / poem by John from osmanthus.press. We had no idea how to read this poem, so we actually reached out to John to read it for us, and it's great.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at a poetry reading event.
Yeah, we're all snapping our fingers. Yeah. No, don't do that. If poetry is not your jam, seriously, give this a chance. It really builds to a frenzy, so hang in there, and then we will see you on the other side of the poem.
On the other side.
All flash, no substance, dissolve in darkness, no eye stands in sunlight, shining in dull, tiny capsules, eating their reflection, silhouetted in the mirror. Come on with the fluorescence. Echoes pierce the light, the dead part in everything, just as much as a 110.01 decibel sound machine. Just as much. Tiny capsules, silhouetted in evanescence, stands in sunlight, echoes pierce just as much. Come on with the fluorescence as a 110.01 decibel sound machine. Larry Bird, tiny capsules shining and dull as Larry Bird lookalikes standing outside a pizza buffet, reflection silhouetted in the mirror, decompositions, feathers the tufts as Bird slam dunks, yeast dissolving and cola, motes of function filament in the game room. The dead part of the quarter dissolves everything in darkness. Everything, darkness dissolve, the shining, the dead, everything part, tiny capsules, discs. This sound machine looks like quarter dissolving everyone's 15 minutes, 15 minutes of yeast functions rise, thought bubbles trapped in a cola glass, stands in evanescence, darkness dissolved capsules like a look tiny minutes functions, fluorescence trapped look like glass 15 minutes, thought glass look like birds trapped dissolving feathers, fluorescence in some scene, dreamy creamy holocene zone D dissolving evanescent prepubescent nascent Larry Bird the pizza chef, thought trapped bubbles, yeast infections, bubbles trapped thought infections, dabbling nascent Larry, kitchen sink trap like bubbles, like someone drank fluorine, 14 minutes, tiny for a time, dissolve, stand flash, stand darkness, dissolve distance, dank, dabbling, scent, dreamy, creamy, kitchen, sinky, trapped, dabbling in soft drinks, opening a briefcase. Larry Bird pulls out a basketball, scent, scene, dreamy, creamy, in a scene, trapped like drinking fluorine 15 times a minute, trapped bubbles, thought nascent. Larry Bird, the pizza chef, thought trapped yeast infection, rise, dabbling in soft kitchen, sinks, trapped tap water like someone put too much fluorine 15 minutes for a time. Bird always said fluorescence, all flash, no substance.
Well, listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this third installment of this low color mini-series within a podcast series. I guess we're going to keep making these. It seems like a lot of you are enjoying them, and it's a nice breather from the giant research and editing monsters that our normal episodes have become.
Yes, and a listener wrote in with some excellent color suggestions to be entered into the, quote, color raffle, which we didn't have, but we're now stealing. We're stealing it because, great, Art Podcast steal?
Yeah.
Lesser Art Podcast borrow.
Sure.
So if you'd like your colors to be entered into the raffle, we would love to include them. You will have to answer at least some of the questions in our next color survey, though, because there's going to be a little segment at the end where you can put in your suggested colors. Anyway, our next color, though, Stephanie, is black.
Black. Black. The survey will be up on this episode's website post at artslicepod.com. If we've taken it down, you've missed your window.
I want to paint it black! Okay. Thanks again to Rose of Loyalty Freak Music for letting us use the song I Need to Do It to Be Alive by Soft and Furious from the album Diving in the Self, which is one of hundreds of incredible songs they've made. You can pick it up for Name Your Own Price on Bandcamp. It's a great album all around. Or you can just go ahead and support Rose's mission to create queer, free music against capitalism and fascism on Patreon. We really appreciate their work because honestly, like Art Slice would not be the same without having music in it.
Definitely not. And listeners, we know shit is tight right now. We are feeling that too.
Oh boy.
If you can though, join our small but excellent group of folks over on Patreon. It really helps pay for everything we need to make Art Slice. It helps us budget, it helps to make our lives easier, and it helps us get these out quicker so you get más Art Slice. Mucho más. Even $1 or $4 is super helpful. Pero si no pueden hacer eso, we 100% understand, okay? Pero si pueden help out by subscribing to us on all of the things, el TikTok, el YouTube, el Instagram.
Especially YouTube. We're actually starting to do stuff on YouTube again.
Yes.
So get over there.
Yes, get over there now. And especialmente sharing us with your friends and leaving us a 5-star rating on your pod player of choice, okay? That helps us get past those algorithm gods.
I'm an algorithm.
And in front of
I am
more
judging you constantly.
eyeballs and ear holes. We
judging you.
We really appreciate it,
Judging.
listeners. We appreciate you.
You are not hitting the correct ratio.
All of these things we would
Where is your
super
dancing dog
appreciate
video? Where is your goat video?
them. We really appreciate it.
So we will see you next time, listeners, on the Art Slice Museum Division of Color Theory and Color Studies. Still don't have a sign off. Color me. Color outside of the lines.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to color outside of the lines. Stephanie's waving goodbye.
Color me goodbye.
Goodbye. Color us bye.